Word, it looks like we are live for today's live stream. Gonna go and send out the link so that some of the other people can get in here for the live stream. And today, yeah, we're gonna cover our projections for Sunday Showdown. Of course, a little bit different than Thursday through Saturday because first off, the cut line was yesterday rather than on Friday. And of course, because for Sunday Showdown, we have all the placement points in play. So make sure you guys keep that in mind. The projection is gonna look a little bit different for that reason. And we're going to go ahead and start off with a quick review of the key stats for the stadium course because for Sunday, that's where we're going to have everyone playing. So I think over here to the key stats tab, if you guys can remember, we're looking for guys that are great on approach. A lot of the bunkering at the stadium course really penalizes any of your misses into greens. There's actually a lot more trouble into these greens than there is off the tee. So that's why we're weighing shots gained approach so heavily here. It's important at almost every single tournament, but for sure here at a Pga design. Number two, driving accuracy. That's because there's a lot of water in play here at the stadium course. You guys have probably seen that on the TV. It's why we expected scores to go up yesterday. But because we had guys like Jon Rahm, Cantlay, Scheffler, Finau, pretty much all of the best players in the field were playing the stadium course yesterday. So I'll play to a little bit of a lower scoring average than we might have expected. So it was right around 1.8 shots under par. At La Quinta, we had 1.9 shots under par yesterday. And of course, the Nicklaus course, which had played the easiest for the entire week, played the hardest yesterday. So we're getting huge changes day to day in terms of the venues, but luckily for us today, only have to focus on the stadium course. The other things that are important, shots gained putting on Bermuda grass. Anytime you get these grainy Bermuda grass greens, that is going to be a factor. Birdie or better percentage, of course, we see guys go to 6, 7 under at this venue. It's not a surprise to see that there. And then par 5 scoring. We're going to do a majority of your scoring at the stadium course is going to be on those long par 5s. So making sure that we target some of the better players in those type of scoring formats is going to be important. So now hopping over to the projections, we'll do a quick little look at the weather before we hop into the actual projections here. So let me go ahead, share my screen here, show you guys what I'm talking about with the weather, because the weather for tomorrow, not necessarily ideal. Go hourly weather forecast. Here we go. I should say for today, just a little bit later this afternoon. Not used to doing these in the morning. Last night was a little bit too tired and just wanted to get this out there bright and early so that anyone playing Showdown today, if you're not watching this live, you can watch this on replay, obviously. So early in the morning, you're looking at about 8 miles an hour, upwards of 7 by the time we get to right around midday. Anytime we see 8 miles an hour sustained winds, probably talking 15, maybe 18 miles an hour wind gusts. It'd be nice if they had that information on here, but going to go ahead and assume that right now. If that's the case, not going to be a huge factor. That's what we saw Thursday. It's what we saw Friday as well. And at this stadium course, we saw a scoring average close to 2.5 under par. In the afternoon, when these leaders are going to be finishing up, 7 miles an hour, 6 miles an hour sustained winds. So same kind of story, if not even easier. Maybe 10 to 12 miles an hour wind gusts. Nothing that I'm expecting to hurt these players too much. The winning score, probably close to 24, 25 under par. You have quite a few guys up there at 18, 17 under par. And I'm expecting somebody, at least somebody in that group up top, to go out there and shoot 7 or 8 under par today. So the winning score might not be as low as what we've seen in the past. I mean, we've seen things like 28, 30 under par win this event before. So I don't think it's going to get quite that low. But in terms of scoring conditions, we're looking at some of the best conditions they've had the entire week. These guys are obviously getting used to the turf over there in La Quinta. Even though they've been on different golf courses, you get used to the firmness of the soil, how much bounce you're getting on your shots. So they should get better at the golf courses as the days go on to begin with. All right, now for the player pool. So this is sorted once again by the 4-round price here. All the course fits are here for the stadium course. I included recent form in case that's your thing, but like I mentioned at the beginning of the week, not much data that went into this metric here. So not something that I'm actively using. What I'm trying to hone in on, of course, is going to be a player's starting score because of the placement points we have in play today. And of course, the stadium fit. Because we know that shots gained approach and driving accuracy are so important, trying to target those guys today is going to be extremely important. So on top of the board, we have Jon Rahm and Patrick Cantlay. I don't think you can go wrong with either option. I believe one of them is not $10,400. So I believe this is a typo here. So make sure you guys keep that in mind. I believe that Patrick Cantlay is less expensive than Jon Rahm. I'll have to double check that after the stream here. I know for a fact that that's a typo. Either way, though, I like going to either option, both elite course fits here. And anytime we're going to get water in play, anytime shots gained approach is going to be a key differentiator. Trying to take one of these guys up tops makes a lot of sense, if not both of them. For 4-round stuff, I was all over Patrick Cantlay. I wish I had a little bit more John Rahm this week. But for here in Showdown, I like both of them, right? Again, if you can fit both of them into a lineup, I could very well see myself doing so. Most of the guys at the top of the board are either these Korn Ferry Tour graduates, Tapar Bajan, Ali Hodges, Tom Hoagie, guys like that are leading this golf tournament. They could very well have a lot of nerves today. I would not be surprised if somebody in this 14 to 13 under range ended up taking home this golf tournament. So a lot of times when we have these placement points that are already built into the guys up top, we want to make sure we're locking in as many as possible. But with some of those no-name guys up top, there's even more opportunity for them to lose that position. So taking kind of these risks on these guys in this 12 to 13 range here, you can see that there's quite a few guys in my player pool. Once we get a little bit further down, like a Luke List at 10 under par, he goes out there, has a really solid day, could crack the top 5. Going down a little bit further, guys like KH Lee, right? He had a great first day on the stadium course, shot 8 under par. Since then, only 2 under par in the other 2 easy golf courses. So you'll see that I'm not targeting only people in contention, but you're going to see a lot of chalk surrounded behind this the guys up top as well, right? A guy like a Seamus Power, I love him to death here in this situation, right? He's a great course fit, somebody we've been targeting here on the channel for quite some time. Unfortunately, 23.1% owned, right? Whereas Patrick Cantlay, just slightly higher owned, but we know the difference in their pedigrees. So that's why I think there's some inherent value to going to some of these guys up top. I'll be doing quite a bit of that in my lineups. I'm not going to be doing so on a Tony Finau. He's a little bit too far back. He's also a little bit more expensive than he should be. I expect him to be a little bit chalky because he has that $8K in front of his price tag right there, $8,700. In reality, if he was $9,000, he would probably come in with half the ownership that he should, right there at 9.5%. But again, with that psychology in play, he's going to come in much higher owned than 9.5%, just because people see that 8 in front of his name there. That $300 difference is probably going to lead to probably twice the ownership, to be honest with you. Scotty Scheffler up here, not going to be making my player pool either. It's not like I hate his play for this golf course. Relatively elite course fit with his approach play and his off the tee play as well. He's very long, but also very accurate. Again, he's just starting a little bit too far back, right? 7 under par. Even if he posts something like 7 or 8 under, might not crack that top 5. Whereas Patrick Cantlay or John Rahm, if they do that same thing, could win the whole golf tournament. Sungjae Im, not going to be going back to him. He didn't look very good yesterday. He was ball striking the heck out of it, but struggling on Bermuda grass, which is something that we've seen from him the last 2-3 months on tour. He kind of bucked that trend a little bit at the Tournament of Champions, but at the Sony Open, once again, lost the putter and has lost it again this week. So long-term sample size shows us that Sungjae is struggling and is a good reason to fade him here. Will Zalatoris, another one of those highly volatile type of players, starting 4 strokes back from the lead, minus 14. But if he goes out there and has a solid day, 6-7 under par, a ceiling type of performance we're looking for in Showdown, that could win this golf tournament, right? Much like a John Rahm, Patrick Cantlay. So these are the type of people that I'm trying to take some of my quote unquote shots on. He's 16.3% owned. It's not like he's being completely overlooked. But at the same time, we have a few guys in this range. I mean, we'll get down to Harebrunner the third here, almost 16% owned. I have him in my player pool, but a guy up here like Seamus Power, 23%. There's no way that Zalatoris should be less owned than these other 2 players. He has much higher upside. We saw him nearly shoot a 59 there on Friday, and that was at the Nicklaus course, a pretty tough course. So I really like pivoting to some of these highly volatile players that are, again, just starting 3 or 4 strokes back. I think that people are kind of looking a little bit too much into that. A few comments down in the chat, and I'll remind you guys, if there's anybody you want me to do a deep dive on, do not be shy at all to go ahead and let me know. We can't cover all the players in the field. We'll cover all the guys I feel key, though. But if there's anyone that I left out, make sure to let me know. He said, what's going on, Ed? Hopefully you're doing good this mighty fine morning. And Double Toppy says, how do you get your ownership projections? Good luck. So with my ownership projections, it's an algorithm I've been working on over the years. Essentially, I'm not going to give away the entire process. You take 600%, you divide it over an entire field, right? So in this case, there's 69 players in the field. The average ownership per player be ran around 8.5%. With that number, I then adjusted up and down, right? So based on a player's projection, I'm able to just flatline adjust that across the board. So it takes the player's projection, weights it based on the average of 8.8 and essentially does a distribution, right? If it's 20-30% over the average score for the field in terms of median projection, that ownership projection gets adjusted up and down accordingly. So what that does, that accounts for the projections. After that, we start to account for some of the sentiment, right? I'll go in, I'll personally adjust what I call a sentiment rating, which is essentially how much a player is being touted. Anytime I see them around the industry being touted, I give them a little bit more weighting in that category, and that'll further boost a player's projection up or down based on their sentiment points. So it's not rocket science by any means, right? But at the same time, it's an algorithmic process that I've learned to do ownership. I'll adjust them as needed up and down by hand. Again, the more and more you play golf DFS, the more you can kind of get a feel for where the ownership is going to be. But that's how I do my ownership projections. And they tend to be pretty accurate. They're definitely not perfect. You'll see from time to time I'll be off by 3-4% on any given projection. But nothing's going to be drastically off. That's what I like about the way I do my process. It's based on projections, which at this point, with so many players in DFS using projections, having optimizers, whatnot, doing your ownership based on projections is pretty much the key at this point, right? I don't want to say there's no dumb players out there, because there certainly are, but there's certainly a lot more sharp players out there these days. Let's move down a little bit further. We have Christian Mozain, who starting at -10. He's a great course fit here. You can see he's a top 5 course fit for the field. That is going to be enough to put him in my player pool, let alone the fact that at 10 under par, if he posts a really nice round today, could end up cracking that top 5 or top 10. So somebody who's a good course fit, I'll be taking a shot on here. Luke List, I already talked about his ball striking. Again, starting at 10 under par, if he has a really solid day, could vault himself up the board. Harold Varner III, going to be chalky, but I love the fact that his demeanor is perfect for this event. I mean, the guy is one of the most laid-back players on tour. You can see him joking with pretty much every player he's paired with, regardless of the tournament. I was watching around the Honda Classic, and I've never heard a group of guys laugh so much. So within a pro-am type of format, that's who you're looking for, right? Some of those laid-back type of guys who, when these players are spraying it left and right, these amateurs, he isn't going to get pissed off, and he's in contention, right? I think today is where you're really going to start to see that effect, is when these amateurs are skipping the ball left and right around. They think that they're playing for their quote-unquote tournament. It's a handicap tournament, for God's sakes. It's not an actual golf tournament. I could go out there, say I'm a 20 handicap, be winning this golf tournament right now. There's some guy who's like 40 under par. That's clearly sandbagging it. I digress. Either way, you're going to see some of the guys get pissed off, right? Because they're in an actual golf tournament. They're playing for all this money, and these amateurs are just skipping the ball around like you and me. So Harold on the third should be able to at least handle that, particularly if he gets his nose into contention. Same thing with Lancho Griffin. Very similar type of demeanor. Their golf game's pretty adequate for this golf course as well. You can see Harold Varner, a top 30 course fit. Not really the case here with Lancho Griffin, but he's a great putter in Bermuda. We have seen him have solid ball striking to this point of the week. So I'll definitely be going to both of those guys. You see solid price tags on both, $7,800, $7,600. There's going to be some mega chalk down low we're going to get to here in a second. This is where I'm trying to pivot, right? Some of those guys are in that 6K range, right around $6,900 to $7,100. It's a lot of the guys up in first place, like a Barjan, a Hodges, a Hoagie, those type of players. These guys are sure a little bit more expensive, but you're also talking about half the ownership. I mean, Lancho Griffin, 11%. Up here, Harold Varner III, 16%. That is half the ownership of some of these guys down low. Barjan's going to be like nearly 40% owned. Tom Hoagie's going to be like 25% owned. So we're going to get to some of these guys, believe it or not, even though it looks a little bit chalky, going to be a slightly interesting pivot there. Little question down chat I see out of the corner of my eye, so we'll get to it. He said, "What's up, Luke? Just like Connor's round 4 last week, Sanjay will be sneaky low owned today." Hey, he'll be sneaky low owned, but he looks like dog shit yesterday. So if you can swallow that, you can get over that. Hey, I understand it, but I can't. Unfortunately, I watched too much of his round to get over that. I had a lot of money invested in Sanjay yesterday. If Sanjay would have shot anything, let's say 4 or 5 under par or better, I would have taken down this Showdown GPP on a single bullet. I ended up finishing in 53rd place on a single bullet yesterday. I had Pendrith, I had Harmon, I had Power, I had Fratelli, who ended up making a bunch of birdies down the stretch as well. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, I can't do it on Sanjay. I'm sorry. I saw too much of his round. He missed way too many putts, and it was infuriating, to be quite honest with you. Let's keep going a little bit further down the board. I see we have a question over here on Molinari. We'll get to him. He's going to be one of those chalky options down low, unfortunately. Some of those guys who are like 15, 16 under par that are really cheap, they're going to be extremely high end. So if you're going to take one of them, make sure you're picking the one that you prefer the most. If Molinari's your guy, I could see it, but make sure you're pivoting elsewhere. Let's go a little bit further down before we get to the 6K range, because getting to that cheap chalk is going to be an important talking point here in a bit. Denny McCarthy had a great round at the Stadium course on round 1. He's 14 under par, starting in a prime position to vault himself up the board. The best putter in the world on Bermuda grass. If you're looking for somebody to get hot in a one-round sample size, just make a ton of birdies, this is the exact type of player we're looking for. In terms of the course fit on the Stadium course, you can see he's a top 20 fit here, which again, just all the metrics pointing up for Denny McCarthy. He's looked good over the last 2 days as well. Definitely a play I'll be dishing out here today. Probably one of my core plays as well. Like I said, a haired runner the third, going to somebody here like a Lancho Griffin. All three of these guys, I like a hell of a lot more than these guys in the 6K range. They're going to be playing with a lot of pressure today. Pga had a very solid day round 1 on the Stadium course. So even though the fit here, it doesn't look very good, I at least like what I saw round 1. So I'll be playing him once again. This is a little bit of a dead range here. A lot of the inexperienced Korn Ferry Tour guys, a lot of them starting very far back. We'll touch on Tom Hoagie here, starting in second place. He's $8,000, so a little bit more expensive than some of the chalk guys we're going to get to here. You can see here, right here, 16.7% expected owned. A lot of that's because there's not a lot of sentiment around the industry. Again, I'm pretty much one of the only Showdown content providers out there right now, which is kind of disappointing. There's like 1 or 2 other ones that I've seen. So I can't really get a sentiment rating on somebody like a Tom Hoagie, but I would imagine the guy starting in third place likely to get quite a bit of steam here for the round. When people are building lineups, they typically just sort it by position, and then they start jamming in all the cheap guys up top. So that's why you see these guys get to 30, 40% owned at times. I would not be surprised to see Hoagie over 25% owned on this slate. The course fit, he's number 60 in the field. He's been better with his recent form. I'm not putting too much stock into that, though. So he's going to be a fade, right? He's $8,000. I would much, much rather go to a haired runner the third, right? So he's starting 2 shots back. But if haired runner the third makes up those 2 shots with birdies, he's not only going to end up with the same amount of finishing points, he's going to end up with an extra 11 points for birdies, right? And he's a much better player on paper. There's no arguing that. We know haired runner the third is a much better player than Tom Hoagie. So in most cases, he should go out there and make more birdies. And if he does that, he's extremely likely to outscore him. So that's kind of like the one-to-one type of decisions you need to be making for Showdown. You can see similar ownership numbers for Tom Hoagie and Haired Varner III. I have him at 16.7% on Hoagie. Up here on Varner III, we have him at 15.9%. But because of the position on the board, because of the price, he's probably going to come in higher owned, Tom Hoagie, that is. So make sure you keep that in mind, right? These projections aren't perfect when it comes to the ownership. And those are the type of situations where you might be off by 3-4%. So move a little bit further down, Harry Higgs. He's starting at 15 under par. He's also going to be relatively chalky, but great course fit, gaining nearly half a stroke per round on Bermuda grass. In terms of the course, we see he's number 81 in the field, which for Harry Higgs and how he's been hitting the ball over the last year, that's solid, right? Usually trying to target him at some of these shorter golf courses. He's not one of the longer off the tee players. He's also a relatively good wedge player, but horrible with his long irons. At the Stadium course, aside from the par fives, not going to have to worry about those long irons. And his strategy for the par fives is to lay up. I mean, he knows his game. He understands that if he's trying to take these risk reward par fives on with some of these long irons, probably not going to go well for him. So as long as Harry Higgs plays smart today, I mean, he's in contention, right? He's not somebody who's in contention very often. I expect him to play relatively conservative today. I like him for cash a whole lot. For GPPs, maybe not just because of the ownership, but for cash, I expect him to have at least a 3-4 under round day. There's just too much on the line for him, right? He's not going to go out there, be his usual self with the aggressive pins. Davis Reilly, somebody who, if you want to take a little bit of a shot on, like to go and maybe win this golf tournament, I already have an outright bet on Davis Reilly, so I'm not going to invest in him here on a Sunday. I got 200 to 1 at the beginning of the week, so no reason to invest in him now that he's like 15 to 1 or whatever. But he's $7,100, great course fit here. He's number 37 in the field for the Stadium course. The putting of Bermuda grass, even though it's a relatively small sample size, has been excellent. And the ball striking this week, he's top 5 in shots gained approach. Granted, we've only had 1 round of sample size. No shot link over there at the Nicklaus or La Quinta course. But yeah, he's top 5 in shots gained approach for the sample size that we have. So great to see there. Can't hold that against them. Let's talk about some of the other chalky options down here. So Lee Hodges and Paul Barjon at $6,100. And then we have Lee Hodges here at $7,200. Barjon's going to be extremely chalky because he's $6,100. He's the near minimum. He's at 18 under par. 27.9% is what I've got on him right now. Do not be surprised when he comes in 40 or even 50% owned today. The algorithm's not going to go nuts on changing these projections, right? Again, the baseline was 8.5% because we had 69 players in the field. It's somebody I'm going to be fading. I'm fading him in GPPs. In cash, I don't think you should fade him, right? He's up there at the top of the board. He's looked good to this point. I've told you about Barjon in his last few weeks. He's been in our player pool for GPPs. Granted, not in a significant fashion, right? He's been like 5 to 10% owned for us. I just can't see him going out there and shooting another crazy round. I know it's backwards logic, right? The guy's gone out there, played well for those first 3 rounds, but this is somebody who's hardly a PGA Tour player. Even though you saw upside in him, he's had a few spike performances on the Corn Ferry Tour. The guys up there at the top of the board that I want to target, right, are these PGA Tour professionals, the guys that have been here before, the guys who, if they end up finishing top 10, it's not going to change their lives. Those are the guys that are going to play a little bit more freely today, go and be a little bit more aggressive. The issue with Barjon is even if he goes out there, shoots 3 under par today, ends up finishing in the top 10, that's not going to be enough for a large field GPP. You still need to be making a ton of birdies. Placement points isn't enough to get by. In order to be optimal on Sundays for Showdown, you're looking at scoring upwards of 60 fantasy points. Whether you're doing that by making 8 or 9 birdies on your day, or you're doing it by finishing in first place and making like 5 or 6 birdies, you have to be doing one or the other. If you had a guy with a 10-shot lead on Sunday Showdown, he was starting in first place, and he was like 80% owned. He went out there, he shot like 3 or 4 over par. He's going to be far from optimal. And I know that's a completely different circumstance. It's one extreme versus the other. But that's the type of situation we're dealing with here, right? So unless you're completely sold on his game, you think he's an immaculate course fit, which there's no way to tell. We don't have a sample size on that. Probably not a play today, especially if he's coming in close to 40, 50% owned. So he'll be in my cash pool, not going to be in my GPP pool for today. Again, you're going to be duplicated with a ton of lineups if you do that, right? Because people that go and take Paul Barjon could be very likely to try and fit in a Rahm and a Cantlay. Probably going to try and take a lot of those guys at 15 under par, like Harold Warner the third, maybe another Tom Hoagie, that kind of thing, and make a lineup, right? They're going to take all those guys up top because you have that extra salary by taking a Paul Barjon. And to be honest with you, if you want to split first place with like 10 to 15 people, 5% of the time, go ahead and do so, right? But we're looking to make first place money here. We're trying to win first place by ourselves. So that's why he's going to be a fade as well, Lee Hodges. He's at 18 under par. He didn't look very good on Friday. He looked decent on Thursday, but he was on the stadium course, didn't have his best round. So he's somebody, the course fit on the stadium course is 141 out of 156 in the field. One of the worst metrics there. The putting on Bermuda grass for his career, he's losing nearly a stroke per round. I expect a ton of regression from Lee Hodges, but also from somebody like a Paul Barjon. I just don't see it. I mean, I would love for the guy to go out and win. There's a ton of people on Twitter that have outright tickets on Barjon, which who the hell is betting money on Paul Barjon? The most money I saw bet on it was like $5 though. So granted, it's not like people are going out and putting the whole bankrolls on it. But yeah, if he ends up winning for that reason, good for them. But I don't see it at all, to be quite honest with you. Jason Dufner here. That's -8. He's $6,600. If you're looking for somebody that can get hop the putter, and when he does, is going to shoot something like 8 or 9 under par, he's your guy. He's an immaculate ball striker. Joseph Bramlett shot 8 under at the stadium course. I believe that was on Thursday. He's $7,800, so certainly a little bit more expensive than he should be, but also coming in low owned. Right? He only have him at 5.8%. Was one off. I have him at 3. I had him at 5.8. Sorry, can't read. 5.8% expected ownership. I have 5.2% on Roger Sloan. I would much prefer to go to Bramlett just because we saw him play so well there when he played his first round. Also a little bit more of a bomber, right? It makes him a little bit more aggressive. He has a higher birdie or better percentage than somebody like a Roger Sloan. So at $7,800 would make a lot of sense. Let's see. Sahith Theegala had a great round yesterday. He shot 5 under par. On Friday, he shot 10 under par. So he got off to that really rough start, but he's a top 25 stadium fit for the field. He's a gainer on Bermuda grass, relatively long player, high birdie or better percentage. So just like a Joseph Bramlett, very similar type of course fit. He's just a little bit cheaper. He's also starting a little bit further up the board. So if Pga goes out there today, shoots 5-6 under par, that kind of thing, is going to finish in the top 5 at the very least. And you can see he's only 14.7% owned, right? So these are the type of levels I'm willing to eat. You know, I could play 35 to 40% of Sahith Theegala and get significant leverage on the field. Whereas a guy like a Lee Hodges, a guy like Barjan, that's going to be 35, 40, maybe even 50% owned in some of those single entry, high dollar type of contests. You have to lock them to get any type of leverage. And I'm not interested in doing so in Showdown. We're dealing with a 1-round sample size. To pretend like we know what a golfer is going to do for a 1-round sample size is a fool's errand. It's the most volatile sport. And anytime you get a smaller sample size on anything that's volatile, you're only increasing that volatility. All right. Yeah. So that's all I've got, guys. I'm not going to keep you guys here forever. A few comments down in the chat we'll cover on before we get out of here. What are my thoughts on Molinari? A little bit more owned than he should be, I would say, but I'm not completely against the play. He's kind of like a meh play for me, very average there. And you were saying you're on him before the tourney started, been playing a lot with Cantlay and Cali. I wish I knew he was playing with Cantlay and Cali. That's good to know. Yeah, man, he didn't look good at all last year, but long-term pedigree for a Molinari, head and shoulders above the guys he was priced around, so completely got the play. It's saying getting on a low-owned Pivete Svensson, high upside. Not sure he'll be low-owned, though. You know, everyone's kind of steaming the guy. You know, he was like 20% owned going into the event. Also relatively high-owned in showdowns up to this point. He's up there in contention. I think he'd be a good play today. I just probably wouldn't be using him as a low-owned play. Let me see what I have him at in my projections before I get ahead of myself. I have him projected for 5.8% right now, but based on his own, 8.3%, but based on his ownership over the last 2 to 3 rounds, he was 11.6% on Friday. He was 12.1% yesterday. It's probably going to come in a little bit higher than that. So make sure you keep that in mind, men. But yeah, I mean, that's still lower than Barjan and all these other guys, right? So he's definitely at least low when compared to them. What's going on, Devin? Gonna listen to the replay? Of course, man. If you have any questions, hit me up on Discord as per always. And what's going on, Robert? Who's the top play today? So yeah, before I get out of here, I'll cover the top play. So my top play for today, if we're saying regardless of price, I'll give you the 2 answers. Regardless of price, Patrick Cantlay, right? He shot 11 under at the Stadium course on Sunday last year, which was by far the best round of the tournament, was by far the most optimal showdown play on that day. If we're talking about price, and price matters, and points per dollar is what we're looking for. Let me just give you the highest points per dollar I have on the slate. Par Barjan, right? He's going to be that chalk. He was that chalk I was just talking about. If you're just doing it based on the projections, he projects for nearly 6x value. So that would be my answer there, man. Hopefully that helps you out. So good luck with all of your lineups today, guys. Again, if you're watching this on replay, do not be shy to throw any questions down in the chat that I didn't cover. And let's get this cash today.